The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room ever built by any species in the known universe. It could hold 10,000 beings at once, with floating platforms for each delegation, and lights that changed color based on who was speaking. For 300 years, this hall had been the center of galactic civilization, the place where wars were ended and peace was made. Today, it would witness something no one had ever expected. Ambassador Daniel Price walked slowly toward the central platform. He was 62 years old, with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes. Those eyes had seen too much. They had watched humanity give everything to the galaxy and receive nothing but complaints in return. The alien delegates were already arguing when he arrived. They were always arguing. The Crocian Empire wanted more territory. The Veluxi Collective wanted more trade rights. The Mendari Federation wanted more respect. Everyone wanted something. Everyone expected humans to provide it. High Counselor Vethinor of the Crocian Empire noticed Daniel approaching and made a sound of annoyance. Vethinor was an insectoid being, 8 feet tall with 4 arms and eyes like broken glass. His species believed they were the natural rulers of the galaxy, even though they had never solved a single problem on their own. The human delegation is late, Vethinor announced. Again. Daniel did not respond to the insult. He had heard worse over his 30 years as ambassador. Instead, he stepped onto the central platform and waited for silence. It took longer than usual. The delegates were busy complaining about humanity's refusal to share their newest starship designs. They did not notice that Daniel's expression was different today. Colder, more determined. Finally, the hall fell quiet. "I have an announcement," Daniel said. Vethinor clicked his mandibles impatiently. "Make it quick. We have important matters to discuss. This will only take a moment." Daniel paused, looking around the hall at the thousands of alien faces. Some were curious. Some were bored. None of them suspected what was coming. The Terran Republic formally withdraws from the Galactic Council. Effective immediately. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. The words hung in the air like smoke. It's too strange to be real. Then chaos erupted. Delegates shouted in a dozen different languages. Vethinor slammed his ceremonial staff against his platform so hard, it cracked. The Veluxi representative turned bright red with shock. The Mendari began chattering among themselves in high-pitched voices. "You cannot do this," Vethinor roared. "The Council requires humanity's participation." "The Council requires nothing from us," Daniel replied calmly. "We volunteered to help. We are now volunteering to stop, but we depend on you for—" Vethinor stopped, unable to finish. "For what?" Daniel asked. "Please tell me. What exactly do you depend on us for?" No one answered. "For keeping the peace between your species. For managing the economy? For solving every problem that you cannot be bothered to solve yourselves?" Still no answer. "For 300 years, humanity has served this council. We have prevented wars. We have cured diseases. We have fed the hungry and sheltered the homeless. We have given you everything we have and asked for nothing but respect in return." Daniel's voice grew harder. "Last month, you voted to punish Earth because we would not give you our engine technology. Technology that took us 2 centuries to develop. Technology that cost thousands of human lives to create. You demanded it as if it was your right. As if our work and our sacrifice meant nothing." He gathered his documents and stepped away from the podium. "You wanted to see what the galaxy looks like without human interference. Now you will find out." High above the chamber floor, Commander Lisa Monroe watched from an observation window. She was 45 years old, the captain of the Terran warship Horizon's Edge. Her orders were simple. Once Daniel finished speaking, she would escort him and the entire human delegation back to Earth. Her first officer, Lieutenant Kevin Torres, stood beside her. He was young, barely 30, and he had never known a galaxy without human involvement. "Is this really happening?" Kevin whispered. Lisa nodded. "It should have happened a long time ago." Down in the chamber, Daniel was walking toward the exit. Alien delegates called out to him, some angry and some afraid. He ignored them all. Vethener shouted after him. "You cannot abandon your responsibilities." Daniel stopped at the great doors and looked back. "We have no responsibilities to you. We never did. We helped because we chose to. Now we choose to stop. The galaxy will fall apart without you." "Yes," Daniel agreed. "It probably will." He walked through the doors, and 300 years of human service came to an end. On the horizon's edge, Lisa gave the order to leave. The ship turned away from the council station, its engines glowing blue as it prepared to jump faster than light speed. "Course set for Earth," Kevin reported. "Ready when you are." Lisa looked at the view screen. The station was growing smaller, becoming just another point of light among the stars. "How long do you think they will last without us?" Kevin asked. "Not long. They have forgotten how to do anything for themselves. Months. Maybe less." Kevin shook his head slowly. "It is going to be bad." But they brought it on themselves. She gave the order, and the ship jumped into faster-than-light travel. Behind them, the Galactic Council station began to fade into the distance. Across the galaxy, on hundreds of different worlds, humans received the same message from their government. "Come home, pack your belongings, say goodbye to your alien friends and colleagues, and come home." Some humans were relieved. They had grown tired of being blamed for every problem and thanked for nothing. They were ready to go home and let the aliens figure things out on their own. Others were worried. They had seen how much the galaxy depended on human knowledge and skill. They knew what would happen when that support was removed. A few refused to leave. They had built lives among the aliens, made friends, started families. They could not simply walk away, but most humans did as they were told. They packed their bags and boarded ships and returned to Earth. Left behind jobs and homes and relationships that had taken years to build, and they left behind a galaxy that had no idea how much trouble it was in. On the council station, High Counselor Vethener called an emergency meeting. The remaining delegates gathered in the Great Hall, platforms arranged in a circle around the empty space where the human delegation had stood. "This is an outrage," Vethener declared. "The humans have betrayed us." Delegate Yorn of the Mindari Federation, a small furry creature with large eyes, raised his paw to speak. "With respect, High Counselor, they did not betray us. They simply stopped helping us." "That is the same thing." "No, it is not." Yorn's whiskers twitched. "Betrayal requires breaking a promise. The humans never promised to serve us forever. We simply assumed they would." Zintani stood straight up in anger. "Are you defending them?" "I am stating facts. The humans warned us many times that they were unhappy. We ignored them. Now they have left. We have no one to blame but ourselves." The hall fell silent. No one wanted to admit that Yorn was right, but deep down, they all knew he was. The galaxy was about to learn a very hard lesson about taking things for granted. 3 weeks had passed since humanity left the Galactic Council. The alien leaders told themselves that everything would be fine. Humans were helpful, yes, but surely the galaxy could manage without them. After all, these species had existed for thousands of years before humans even discovered fire. They were about to discover how wrong they were. The first sign of trouble came from the Crocian Empire. For 80 years, the Crocian had maintained an uneasy peace with their old enemies, the Veluxi Collective. Human diplomats had negotiated that peace and spent decades maintaining it. Whenever tensions rose between the two species, a human ambassador would step in, calm everyone down, and find a solution that both sides could accept. But there were no human ambassadors anymore. The argument started over something small. A group of asteroids in the Cathora Nebula contained valuable minerals. Both the Crocian and the Veluxi claimed the right to mine those minerals. The Crocian said the asteroids belonged to them by ancient law. The Veluxi pointed to a treaty that gave them access. Both sides were partly right. A skilled diplomat could have found a compromise within hours, but there were no skilled diplomats available. The humans had all gone home. General Zethkar of the Crocian military met with his emperor to discuss the situation. "The Veluxi are sending ships to the nebula," he reported. They refused to negotiate with us directly. Emperor Vaxiner, an old Crocian whose shell had turned white with age, waved one of his forearms dismissively. Contact the humans. They will handle this. The humans are gone, my emperor. They left 3 weeks ago. Then contact whoever replaced them. Zethkar hesitated before answering. No one replaced them. The council has no diplomatic service without the humans. The emperor stared at his general for a long moment. His antennae slowly drooped as the reality of the situation became clear. Then we will talk to the Veluxi ourselves. Tried. They ended the communication immediately. On the Veluxi homeworld, Trade Minister Sixal was having a similar conversation with her own leaders. The Veluxi were serpentine creatures whose scales changed color based on their emotions. Right now, Sixoli's scales were a deep orange, the color of worry. We must contact the humans, she insisted. They have always helped us deal with the Crocian. The humans have refused all communication, her assistant replied. Ambassador Price said, and I quote, "You wanted to handle things without us, so handle them." Sixolia's scales flickered to red, then back to orange. Surely they cannot be serious. They seem very serious. The Crocian Veluxi dispute was just the beginning of the galaxy's problems. The interstellar banking system had been designed by human economists and operated by human administrators. It handled trillions of credits and transactions every day, converting currencies, verifying payments, and ensuring that trade flowed smoothly between worlds. Without human oversight, the system began to fail. Exchange rates became unpredictable. Payments that should have taken seconds now took days or weeks. Merchants could not get paid for their goods. Buyers could not pay for what they needed. 3 major trading companies went bankrupt in a single week. Their collapse sent shockwaves through the galactic economy. More companies began to fail. Panic spread. The transportation network was the next system to break down. Human engineers had built and maintained the web of navigation beacons en route, markers that allowed ships to travel safely between stars. They had updated the data constantly, adjusting for the movement of asteroids and the drift of celestial bodies. Now the data was becoming outdated. Captain Urix of the Mendari freighter Starbound was the first to discover how dangerous this was. His ship came out of faster-than-light travel and found itself in the middle of an asteroid field that was not supposed to be there. "The navigation data is wrong," his pilot shouted, desperately trying to avoid the tumbling rocks. "This field should be 50,000 kilometers away from here. How is that possible? The humans have not updated this sector since they left. The data is 3 weeks old. An asteroid the size of a small building passed within meters of the ship. Another struck their shields, sending the vessel spinning. Can we fix the data ourselves?" Captain Urix demanded. "No. The system requires human authorization codes." "Why would the humans lock us out of our own navigation system?" The pilot looked at his captain with exhausted eyes. "It is not our system. It is theirs. They built it. They maintained it. We just used it." On the agricultural world of Plentha, Governor Mira Walsh watched the situation deteriorate with growing horror. Mira was one of the few humans who had stayed behind when the others left. She had governed Plentha for 15 years and felt responsible for its people, both human and alien. Now she was watching her world slowly starve. The food shipments did not arrive again, her logistics chief reported. Derek Sullivan was a thin man with tired eyes. He had not slept properly since the crisis began. "That is the 4th delivery we have missed this month." "What happened this time?" "The Yendari were supposed to coordinate with the Crocian cargo ships. But the Yendari are angry at the Crocian because the Crocian are angry at the Veluxi. The Veluxi owe money to the Yendari. Nobody is talking to anybody." Mira rubbed her forehead. She could feel a headache building behind her eyes. "So are people starved because 3 species cannot behave like adults?" "For species, actually. The Mendari pulled out their trade representative yesterday." Outside her office window, Myra could see crowds gathering in the streets. The people of Plentha were starting to realize that something was very wrong. They were frightened and confused. And they were looking for someone to blame. Her communicator beeped with a message from Earth. Governor Walsh, this is the Terran Foreign Ministry. We strongly advise you to return home immediately. The situation in alien space is becoming dangerous. Mira looked at the hungry crowds outside. These were her people. She had promised to take care of them. I cannot leave, she whispered. Not yet. But she was only one person. And the galaxy was falling apart faster than anyone had expected. At the Galactic Council station, Counselor Vethner called an emergency session. The chamber that had once been filled with confident delegates now held only frightened beings looking for answers that no one had. This is clearly the humans' fault, Vethner announced. They abandoned us on purpose. Delegate Yorn of the Mendari raised his paw. With respect, they did not abandon us. We pushed them away. There is a difference. They had a duty to serve this council. They had no duty at all. They helped us because they wanted to. We treated them like servants, and they got tired of it. Can you blame them? Vethanar slammed his staff against the floor. I will not be lectured by a Mindari, then you will be lectured by reality. Yorn's voice was steady despite his small size. The humans are gone. Our economy is collapsing. War is coming between the Crocian and the Veluxi, and we have no one to blame but ourselves. The chamber fell silent, for the first time in 300 years. The Galactic Council had to face a simple truth. They had no idea how to run a galaxy, and they were about to learn that lesson in the hardest way possible. 6 months had passed since humanity left, and the galaxy was dying. The war between the Crocian Empire and the Veluxi Collective had begun 3 months ago. What started as an argument over mining rights had grown into the bloodiest conflict in a century. 17 star systems were now battlefields. Millions of soldiers and civilians had died. Entire planets had been bombed into lifeless rocks. Admiral Sexer of the Veluxi fleet stood on the command deck of her flagship, watching her ships burn. The Crocian attack had come without warning, a massive assault that overwhelmed her defenses within hours. Now her fleet was scattered, running for its life. How many ships have we lost? She asked, her voice hollow. 47 destroyers, 12 cruisers, and 3 carriers, her second-in-command reported. Over 80,000 dead? Sixthar closed her eyes. 80,000 lives, gone in a single day. And there would be more tomorrow. And the day after that, contact the Galactic Council, she ordered. Demand immediate help, Admiral. The Council has not responded to our last 15 requests. Send it anyway. The message went out into the void. No answer came. On the Crocian side, General Zethkar was not celebrating his victory. Every battle cost resources that his empire did not have. The economy was failing. Factories were closing. Food was running short. His soldiers were winning on the battlefield, but his people were starving at home. How long can we keep fighting? Emperor Voxanar asked during their daily briefing. A year, perhaps? Maybe less. And if the Veluxi do not surrender by then? Zethkar had no answer. The truth was that both empires were destroying each other. There would be no winner in this war. Only survivors far from the front lines. The rest of the galaxy was collapsing in its own ways. The Mendari Federation had always prided itself on its medical technology. Mendari doctors were considered the finest in the galaxy. Mendar hospitals were the most advanced anywhere. For centuries, sick beings from dozens of species had traveled to Mendari worlds for treatment. But Mendari, medicine depended on supplies imported from across the galaxy. Special drugs from the Crocian worlds. Medical equipment from Veluxi factories. Raw materials from a dozen other sources. Human logistics experts had coordinated these supply chains, making sure that everything arrived where it was needed. Now those supply chains were broken. Chief Physician Yen stood in the central hospital of the Mendari homeworld, surrounded by patients she could not help. The medicine storage rooms were empty. Critical machines were breaking down, and there were no spare parts to fix them. New patients arrived every hour, but there was nothing she could do for them. We need antibiotics from the Crocian, she told her assistant. Pain medication from the Veluxi. Surgical supplies from the Yendari. The Crocian and Veluxi are at war. The Yendari have closed their borders. No one is trading with anyone. Yen looked at the rows of beds filled with suffering Mindari. Many of them had diseases that should have been easy to treat. With the right supplies, she could save them in a few days. Without those supplies, she could only watch them die. In the old days, she said quietly, I would have called a human coordinator. The supplies would have arrived within a week. The humans are gone. I know. Yen's whiskers drooped with sadness. I know. At the Galactic Council station, the Great Chamber was almost empty. Half the species had withdrawn their delegates entirely. The others sent only junior representatives, not wanting to waste important officials on a body that seemed powerless to do anything. Councillor Vethener stood at his platform, looking older and more tired than anyone had ever seen him. The situation is critical, announced Delegate Yorn, one of the few senior diplomats who still attended. The war is spreading. The economy has collapsed. Famine is appearing on worlds that have not known hunger in generations. What do you suggest we do? Vethener asked. I suggest we contact the humans and ask for help. Never. Voice's voice was firm despite his exhaustion. They abandoned us. We will not beg. Then we will die. Is your pride worth more than the lives of billions? Vethener's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme stress. The humans caused this crisis by leaving. Humans held this galaxy together for 300 years. They asked only to be treated with respect. We gave them insults instead. Yorn stepped forward, his small body shaking with emotion. I was there when we voted to punish them for keeping their technology. I voted yes. I thought they were being selfish. I was wrong. The chamber was silent. I will not apologize to humans. Vethener said finally, then you will watch the galaxy burn. On Earth. The Terran Senate debated what to do next. President Nathan Cole stood at the podium, his face grave. He had hoped the aliens would learn their lesson quickly. Instead, 6 months had passed, and the situation was far worse than anyone had expected. The Veluxi have formally requested humanitarian aid, he reported. The Mindari are begging for medical supplies. Even the Crocian have quietly asked about economic assistance. Senator Amy Patterson leaned forward. And what do they offer in return? Nothing. They seem to believe we should help simply because we always have. Then let them wait. Senator, millions are dying out there. Ashami's expression did not soften. Thousands of our people died developing the technology they demanded we give away for free. Our scientists worked themselves to death, and the council called us selfish. Let them understand what it means to face problems alone. Many senators nodded in agreement. Admiral Gregory Shaw spoke next. I understand the anger, but we must think about the future. If galactic civilization collapses completely, it may never recover. We could be looking at a dark age that lasts for centuries. President Cole rubbed his tired eyes. We did not leave to watch everyone die. We left because we wanted to be treated as equals. And perhaps, Senator Patterson said slowly, we should make them understand exactly what that means. Governor Myra Walsh finally admitted defeat. The food riots had started 2 weeks ago. Her security forces could barely maintain order. The warehouses were empty. The farms were failing. And the ships that should have brought supplies never came. We have to leave, Derek Sullivan told her. We have done everything we can. Myra looked out at the city she had tried so hard to save. The streets were filled with desperate people searching for food that did not exist. I promised I would stay. You promised you would help. You cannot help if you are dead. A Terran transport ship was waiting at the spaceport. It was one of the last human vessels in the sector. Myra gathered her remaining staff and walked to the ship. Along the way, she passed crowds of aliens who watched her with angry, desperate eyes. You were leaving us, one of them said. A young Veluxi female whose scales had turned the gray color of hopelessness. I am sorry, Mira whispered. I am so sorry. She boarded the ship and did not look back. As the transport rose into the sky, Derek sat beside her. It is not your fault, he said, is it not? We spent centuries making them need us. Then we took away our help and watched them fall. Derek was quiet for a long time. They had centuries to learn to stand on their own. They chose not to. Does that make it better? No, it does not. The ship jumped too faster than light speed, carrying the last humans away from a dying world. Behind them, the galaxy continued to collapse. 1 year after humanity left, a small group of alien ships approached Earth. They came slowly, with their weapons turned off and their shields lowered. They broadcast messages of peace on every radio frequency. These ships carried representatives from 7 different species, including some who had been the loudest critics of humanity before everything fell apart. Admiral Gregory Shaw watched them approach from Terran Defense Command. Should we let them through? His assistant asked. Gregory thought about the question. Part of him wanted to turn them away, to let them feel the same rejection that humanity had experienced for so long. But that would make humans no better than the aliens they had left behind. Let them land, he ordered, but keep our defenses ready. The alien delegation gathered in the reception hall of the Terran Capitol building in New Geneva. The hall was designed to impress visitors. High ceilings stretched overhead. Beautiful artwork covered the walls. The floor was made of polished stone from every continent on Earth. Ambassador Daniel Price entered the hall with Commander Lisa Monroe and several security officers. Daniel looked older than he had a year ago. The stress of watching the galaxy collapse had affected everyone. High Counselor Vethener stood at the front of the alien group. He looked very different from the proud leader, Daniel remembered. His shell had lost its shine. His movements were slow and uncertain. The mighty Crocian, who had once demanded obedience, now stood hunched and broken. Ambassador Price, Vethener said quietly, "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." "I agreed to listen," Daniel replied. "Whether I agree to help depends on what you have to say." Vethener's antennae drooped. "We were wrong. The Council was wrong. We took your people for granted, and we have suffered greatly for our foolishness." Daniel said nothing. He waited. "The Crocian Empire's destroyed," Vethener continued. "Our war with the Veluxi has ruined both our peoples. Our economy has collapsed. Our citizens are starving. I have lost 3 of my 4 children in this conflict." His voice cracked with grief. "I did not come here to make excuses. I came to apologize and to beg for mercy." Delegate Yorn stepped forward. The small Mandari looked exhausted. His fur was dirty and matted. His large eyes were dull with suffering. "The Mandari Federation is dying," he said simply. "Our hospitals have failed. Diseases we cured long ago have returned. Our population has fallen by 12% in the past year alone." One by one, the other delegates told their stories. The Veluxi spoke of their devastated homeworld. The Yendari described economic disaster. Even species that had avoided the war directly had suffered from the breakdown of trade and communication. When they finished, Daniel looked at them for a long moment. "You could have prevented all of this," he said. "All you had to do was treat us with respect." "We know," Vethener replied. "We were fools. You were worse than fools. You were cruel. You took what we gave freely and demanded more. You blamed us when things went wrong. You voted to punish us for keeping what belonged to us." The aliens lowered their heads in shame. There was nothing they could say. "Why should we help you now?" Daniel asked. "Give me one good reason." Yorn raised his paw to speak. "Because you are better than we are. You have always been better than we are. That is why you helped us in the first place, even when we did not deserve it. That is why you stayed for 300 years, even when we treated you badly. And that is why I believe you will help us now, even though we still do not deserve it." Daniel looked at Lisa. She gave a small nod. "We will help," Daniel said. "But things will be very different this time." He placed a document on the table. "These are our terms. You will read them. You will accept them. There will be no negotiation." Vethener took the document with trembling hands. The terms were simple but firm. Humanity would return to galactic affairs, but as equal partners, not servants. Human technology would remain human property, shared only when humans chose to share it. All species would contribute fairly to joint projects, not just expect humans to do the work. And there would be an official recognition of everything humanity had done for the galaxy over the past 3 centuries. "These terms are fair," Yorn said after reading them. Vethener hesitated. Old pride is hard to let go of. For a moment, Daniel thought the Croatian would refuse. Then Vethener lowered his antennae in submission. The Croatian Empire accepts. One by one, the other delegates agreed. Good, Daniel said. Then we have much work to do. Over the following weeks, human ships began returning to alien space. They carried food for the hungry, medicine for the sick, engineers to rebuild what was broken, and diplomats to make peace where there was war. President Nathan Cole authorized the largest relief mission in Terran history. Every available ship was loaded with supplies. Every available expert was sent to help. The first task was ending the Croatian-Veluxi War. Daniel traveled to the front lines himself, meeting with military commanders from both sides. The talks were difficult. Too much blood had been spilled. Too many families had lost loved ones. But Daniel was patient. He had learned patience during 30 years of dealing with alien stubbornness. You can keep fighting until both your species are dead, he told the generals. Or you can accept peace and rebuild together. There is no other choice. General Zethkar of the Croatian looked at his Veluxi counterpart, Admiral Sixthar. They'd been enemies for so long that peace seemed impossible. If we stop fighting, Sixthar said slowly, how do we know the Croatian will not attack again? Human peacekeepers will guard the border, Daniel replied. Any attack will be stopped immediately. We will not take sides. We will simply keep the peace. Why should we trust humans? Daniel smiled grimly. Because you have no one else to trust? And because unlike every other species in this galaxy, humans have never broken their word. The peace treaty was signed the next day, on the Mendari homeworld. Chief Physician Yen watched as human medical ships landed at her hospital. Teams of doctors and nurses rushed out, carrying equipment and supplies that her people desperately needed. We did not ask for this much help, she said to the human coordinator. A woman named Mira Walsh, who had returned to service after escaping from Plentha. You did not have to ask, Mira replied. We knew what you needed. The Mendari worked alongside the humans, learning techniques they had forgotten and discovering new methods they had never known. Within weeks, the hospital was working again. Within months, the worst diseases were under control. Thank you, Yen, said one. Evening, for everything. Mira looked at her with kind but tired eyes. You are welcome. Just remember this feeling the next time you think about taking us for granted, Yen nodded slowly. I will remember. We all will. Back on Earth, President Cole spoke to the Terran Senate. The galaxy is healing, he reported. The war is over. Trade is starting again. The worst of the crisis has passed. What has humanity gained from all this? Senator Patterson asked. Cole smiled. Something worth more than territory or technology. We have gained respect. The galaxy finally understands that we are not their servants. We are their equals, and they will never forget it. The senator stood and applauded. Outside in the streets of New Geneva, ordinary humans went about their lives. They worked and laughed and raised their children. Most of them had never met an alien in person, but they knew what their species had accomplished. They had saved a galaxy that did not deserve to be saved, and they would make sure no one ever forgot. 5 years had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Council. The galaxy that existed now was completely different from the one they had left behind. The old council was gone, destroyed by its own failures. In its place stood the Interstellar Cooperative, a new organization built on ideas that humanity had demanded from the beginning. Every species had an equal voice. Every contribution was fairly rewarded. Every decision was made through real cooperation, not demands and complaints. The first official meeting of the cooperative was held on a brand new space station. Built in neutral territory where no single species could claim ownership, delegates from 15 worlds gathered in a chamber designed to feel welcoming instead of intimidating. The floating platforms of the old council had been replaced by a circular arrangement where everyone sat at the same level, looking at each other as equals. President Nathan Cole represented humanity at this historic gathering. His hair had turned completely gray over the past 5 years, but his eyes were still sharp and determined. He had guided his species through the hardest period in their galactic history. Now, he would lead them into a new age. "We come together today not to celebrate what was lost, but to build something better," Nathan began. "The old council failed because it was built on unfairness. Some species gave, while others only took. Some voices were heard, while others were ignored. We will not make those mistakes again." The delegates listened in respectful silence. There was no clicking of mandibles, no impatient color changes, no whispered complaints. They had learned, through great suffering, what real respect meant. "Humanity never wanted to rule the galaxy," Nathan continued. "We never wanted to be masters or servants. We wanted to be partners. Today we take our place as equals among equals, and we offer our friendship to everyone who is willing to accept it." Former High Counselor Vethener, now simply Delegate Vethener, rose from his seat. The Crocian leader had changed greatly since the dark days of the collapse. His shell looked healthier now, but his manner was much humbler than before. "On behalf of the Crocian Empire," he said, "I accept humanity's offer of partnership. We have learned what it means to be alone, and we have no wish to experience that again." One by one, the other delegates spoke similar words. The Voluxi, the Mendari, the Yendari, and all the rest. Every species promised to support the new order. Ambassador Daniel Price watched from the back of the chamber. He had officially retired from diplomatic work last year, but he had asked to attend this meeting as a guest. After 35 years of working toward this moment, he wanted to see it with his own eyes. Commander Lisa Monroe sat beside him. She had been promoted many times since the withdrawal and now led the cooperative's peacekeeping forces. Human ships patrolled the borders between former enemies, making sure old conflicts stayed in the past. "We actually did it," Lisa whispered. "We changed everything." Daniel nodded slowly. "It cost more than I expected, but yes, we did it." In the year after humanity returned, the galaxy had been rebuilt almost from the ground up. Human engineers fixed the transportation network, but this time they trained alien workers to maintain it themselves. Human economists redesigned the banking system, but with oversight from all participating species. Human diplomats made new treaties, but made sure those treaties could work without human involvement. The goal was clear: make sure the galaxy could survive even if humanity left again. No one wanted to repeat the disaster of 5 years ago. Delegate Yorn of the Mindari approached Daniel during a break in the meeting. "I wanted to thank you personally," Yorn said. "Without your patience and wisdom, none of this would exist." Daniel smiled. "I did not do it alone. Humanity worked together. We always do. That is what makes you special. Every other species in this galaxy is divided by groups fighting each other. Humans support each other, even when you disagree. It is remarkable. It is necessary. The universe is too big for anyone to face alone." On the Crocian homeworld, rebuilding was happening faster than anyone had hoped. Human builders worked alongside Crocian workers to design new cities that combined the best ideas from both cultures. Fields that had burned during the war were now green with crops, grown using methods that human farmers had shared freely. General Zethkar, who had commanded the Crocian military during the terrible war, now oversaw the rebuilding effort. He had once thought humans were soft and weak. Now he understood that their kindness came from strength, not weakness. "The humans could have conquered us," he told his emperor one evening. "After the collapse, we had nothing. They could have taken everything we had. Why did they not?" Vaxener asked. "Because that is not who they are. They do not want subjects. They want friends." The emperor thought about this for a long time. "Then we should try to be worthy friends." On the Voluxi homeworld, similar changes were happening. The war had killed many of their people, but the survivors were determined to create a better future. Human advisors helped them improve their government. Human teachers started schools where young Voluxi learned not just facts and skills, but also the importance of working together. Who had been part of the first alien group to visit Earth after the collapse, now served as her world's representative to the cooperative. She had become a strong voice for friendship between humans and aliens. We spent centuries believing we were better than everyone else, she told a group of young Veluxy students. We thought we could take what we wanted and ignore those who helped us. We were wrong. The humans taught us that true strength comes from helping others, not hurting them. Back on Earth, life had returned to normal for most people. The crisis was over. The galaxy was stable. Everyday concerns had replaced worries about galactic politics. But something had changed. There was a new pride in being human. People understood that their species had done something extraordinary. They had saved a civilization that did not deserve saving, not through weapons or tricks, but through patience and kindness and refusing to give up on those who had failed them. Governor Mira Walsh had returned to public service, accepting a job as Earth's ambassador to the cooperative. She traveled between Earth and the new space station, working to make sure the mistakes of the past would never happen again. Her old assistant, Derek Sullivan, worked beside her. They had been through too much together to ever separate. "Do you think it will last?" Derek asked one evening as they looked out at the stars. Mira considered the question carefully. Nothing lasts forever. Species will make mistakes. Arguments will happen. Someone will forget the lessons we taught them. That does not sound very hopeful, but Mira continued. When those things happen, we will be there to remind them. And this time, they will listen. Because they remember what happened when they did not. The interstellar cooperative would face many challenges in the years ahead. Old anger would return sometimes. New problems would appear. The work of keeping peace and helping others was never finished, but humanity would be there, as partners and friends, to help the galaxy through whatever troubles came. Not because they had to. Not because someone forced them, but because that was who they were. In a small coffee shop in New Chicago, an old man sat reading the news on his tablet. The story was about the 5th anniversary of the cooperative. With celebrations happening on 100 different worlds, a young woman sat down across from him. His granddaughter, home from her first job as a junior diplomat on a Mendari world. "Grandpa, did you really live through the collapse?" Daniel Price put down his tablet and smiled at her. "I did more than live through it. I helped end it." "What was it like? When everything fell apart?" Daniel thought about the question for a long time. He remembered the fear and the anger. He remembered the desperate hope that things could be made right. He remembered watching worlds burn because of pride and stubbornness. "It was terrible," he finally said. "But it taught us something important. It taught the galaxy that they needed us. And it taught us that being needed is what gives our lives meaning." His granddaughter looked confused. "What do you mean?" "We spent 300 years helping people who did not appreciate us. We could have stopped at any time, but we did not, because helping others is who we are. The collapse reminded us of that truth. So it was worth it? All the pain and suffering?" Daniel looked out the window at the city.